everybody. Welcome to Inside Geocaching HQ, the podcast. This is episode 2. I am Chris Ronan. I work at Geocaching HQ in Seattle. I am the PR manager here, also on the community volunteer support team. Thanks for listening. We hope you had a very happy new year and that you have been able to get out and do some caching in 2017. Or maybe this is the time of year when you plan your upcoming geocaching for when the temperatures warm up and the snow melts away. And maybe you're planning to collect a few new souvenirs in this new year. If so, you will enjoy this episode because we are talking souvenirs. This seemed to be a good time to do it since we released 5 new souvenirs at the end of last year. So I chatted with Annika from HQ's marketing team, as well as Nate and Roxxy from the creative team. We will have more on that in just a minute. Also on this episode, we have the man, the myth, the legend, the master of all he surveys, John Stanley, a.k.a. Mountain Bike. There is a good chance you have heard of John. He is the father of the GeoCoin after all, but he has done even more in geocaching, including owning one of the ape caches. The one that he owns, Mission 9 Tunnel of Light, located just east of Seattle, was rediscovered late last year after being muggled several years ago. We will talk with John about the rediscovery and what it was like to maintain one of those famous ape caches. So we've got a lot of good stuff to cover. Let's start with souvenirs. Annika Ledbetter is a member of the marketing team at Geocaching HQ. She is intimately involved with the souvenir process. So here is me and Annika talking souvenirs. Okay, so Annika, let's first talk about how you ended up at HQ. And you've been here a while and you've done a lot of cool things. So where did it start for you?
Oh my. It started in 2013 and it started with the community management team. So I started with answering a lot of questions from the community, kind of diving in deep from the get-go, which was great to get a start at HQ. And then I moved over to the volunteer support team. And then kind of found my niche there in supporting translators and kind of from there moved over to localization. And that's what I'm doing still today, just kind of helping that the game is represented well in other countries that it's played in all over the world. And then also a big part of my job now is in marketing. It's not a very traditional marketing role at HQ. It's more about how do we get people excited to play the game. And one important way to do that is through the souvenirs that we have. And I think now I took it away.
Now you led us right into where what we were gonna talk about.
Yeah.
We brought you here to talk about souvenirs. It's a subject that people are always really interested in. It's one of the really fun parts of the game. We hear a lot of questions. People don't know as much about what goes into souvenirs and how do we decide which souvenirs will be out there. So maybe let's just start with kind of how souvenirs started at HQ and how they came to be and how we got to where we are.
And I had to do some research on that because I'm only here since 2013, but souvenirs exist since July 2010, and they were basically created as an added incentive to visit a specific location. And so I think the first one that came out was a visit Geocaching HQ, and you log the cache there. You get a Geocaching HQ souvenir, kind of I was here, extra little digital picture on your profile. And then the next one was the Lost and Found celebration. That was the 10-year anniversary of geocaching and a few others. But like kind of in the beginning, all the souvenirs were tied to just one specific cache, like kind of special highlight events or caches or so on. I think the ape cache was one. I think you still get one if you visit the ape cache in Brazil.
You do, yes.
You should know.
I do know, and I did get it.
Yeah, there you go. So that's kind of how it started. And then over time, more and more souvenirs were added kind of for different things. And we're going to talk about that, I think, a little bit.
Sure. Let's talk about
that. Yeah, I think that's interesting, too. I mean, I think somebody who's in the game for a while has probably a pretty good handle on what type of souvenirs we have, but it's maybe good still to mention. So we have country souvenirs and regional souvenirs. They're also very well liked. We're covering about, I think, 44 countries or so. Either, the United States, there's a souvenir for any state or for each state you visit. For other countries, like we just released a Russia souvenir, you will have a souvenir if you find a cache anywhere in Russia. Other types of souvenirs are for, as I mentioned before, visiting specific type of caches, like HQ still gets a souvenir, the plaque near Portland, the original cache, gets one. And then there's some that you get if you participate in some of the HQ challenges that we bring out, over the summer. Mission GC, for example, you find a specific cache during a specific time frame, and that's just to encourage people to broaden their knowledge of the game. Some people have never found a multi-cache, and that kind of gets them out there and try it. And then we have, lastly, souvenirs for attending mega and giga events. And with all those, like if you count all the mega giga events and all the other events all over time, the time of souvenirs, we now have a staggering number of 564 souvenirs you can earn.
I never knew that.
I don't think anybody has those. And I also don't think it is humanly possible, but that's a good number. Also, one thing I found out today, which I found pretty remarkable, total awarded souvenirs are more than 20 million.
Wow.
So, yeah, a lot of people have cached in different places on Earth and participated in the challenges and, attended events. So, good signs.
And so then the process of souvenirs, let's talk about how it works.
Yeah.
How does one earn a souvenir? And just, there's a lot that goes into the whole process.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's also a question we get sometimes is, why can't I have a souvenir for this or that? And it is a little bit based on how they technically work. To bore you a little bit with the technical details here, they are tied to logging. So we cannot decouple them from an action taken by a player that is, I go, I log a find, I go, I attend, I log attended on an event. So these are the options we have, though we have many options within that where we can say a specific type of cache, a cache with so and so many favorite points, a cache during this time, an event during this time, a Cyto event during a time. So we have ways to, segment and highlight specific caches or events or and also award specific behaviors, but they're always tied to logging a cache.
Okay, and so when we come out with new souvenirs, like at the end of 2016, when we had, let's go through them, Russia, Romania, China, Puerto Rico,
and Singapore.
Those were the new souvenirs at the end of 2016. People, of course, naturally ask, why don't you have X or Y or Z, or there's any number of, as you said, other countries that still don't have souvenirs. So let's try to address that.
Yeah, this is a question that I think I can remember getting a lot too when I was working as a community manager, working email tickets and so on. Yeah, people really like to be rewarded for, going out of their way, finding a cache on their vacation or far from home and so on. And I think it makes total sense to have those map pins basically on your profile, and we absolutely, that's our goal as well. Why don't we put more out each year? That is a more complicated answer. It's partially the process that we do. We try to be very diligent. We try to be very careful. Specifically, we want to have, some beautiful artwork associated, because that's how we've done it with the other countries. We don't want to, just suddenly do something completely different. So we kind of want to keep that path. And we have to make sure that anything we put on there is not offensive in any way, does appropriately represent a country. So we do check in with the local community or local players and make sure that what we're choosing, aligns. So that takes time, that takes back and forth communication. The other thing we're really making sure of, if we are displaying some symbols, if we're displaying images, pictures, anything, do we own the right to these? Is it legally sound? These are all the things we have to check and make sure. And Then another thing that we started doing is to really highlight each country and what is special about it and what are the best geocaches in those countries, which is an additional effort to it that we though find is important.
Which is something like that's done in the blog, for instance,
exactly.
where each time Romania or all the other four that we went through, Singapore, Puerto Rico, each time there was a blog post that talked about geocaching in that country and all of that. So, of course, a lot of research and time goes into writing those.
Yeah.
So now looking ahead in 2017, can we talk at all about what might be coming down the pike here in the coming months?
We kind of like the surprise element of souvenirs for sure. We do not want to leak too much. There will be, what I can say is there will be a few that you can expect from what we did in the previous years. We're also started work on a pretty fun summer challenge, and I do not want to say anything.
Wow, that has piqued my interest.
Yeah,
I may have to go snooping around and see what I can find out for myself.
I'm really excited for it. I hope it will catch on. But yeah, I'm really quite excited.
and there have been really fun summer promotions over the last couple of years. You mentioned Mission GC, which was, maybe talk about that a little bit, because that was very different than what had been done in previous years. People, I think, had gotten used to the 31 and 31 and the various things along those lines. But Mission GC was really different, and a lot of people had a lot of fun with it. Yeah,
we kind of just thought, what is geocaching really about? And it always feels like you're on a mission, right? To find a cache. You're a little bit, you're doing it under, kind of in secret. You are a bit of a spy. So this whole theme seemed to fit the game so well. And we also didn't just want to repeat what we had done in the years before, such as say, find a cache here and there, just, have it simple and straightforward. We wanted to add this extra layer of mystery and involvement and really getting people to work together. I enjoyed so much reading all the comments on the blog where people helped each other find the solution for it without spoiling, often without spoiling.
Right.
And it just was a really great energy. And we definitely, it came out of the idea to do something we hadn't done before and something a little different, but within the framework that we had, that our souvenirs awarded in a certain way.
All right. Well, we covered some pretty good stuff, I think.
Yeah.
You feel good about it?
I do.
Nothing
20
else?
20 million awarded souvenirs. I find that
is
number
amazing.
Really cool. So yeah, thank you.
So Annika and the marketing team are very involved in souvenirs, but so is the creative team. And if you've ever earned a souvenir, then you have seen the work of Roxxy Getz and Nate Kavanaugh. They are fantastically creative designers at Geocaching HQ, and I had the chance to talk with them about what goes into designing those cool souvenirs. Here we go. Okay, so we have Roxxy and Nate, and we're going to talk about souvenirs and the work that they do to create souvenir artwork for the geocaching community. But before we do that, you guys have both been here a little while, and you know the community really well. So Roxxy, maybe talk first about how long you've been here and what you just generally do at Geocaching HQ.
All right, Chris. Well, I've been here as a member of the creative team since April 2010. So we're going to be coming up on my 7th year here at Geocaching HQ. Very excited about that. We mostly cover a lot of our illustration assets, usually for blog posts and Facebook posts and t-shirts. Personally, I'm kind of our resident signal wrangler. So if you ever get a geocoin or a t-shirt or some kind of fun holiday post that we put up and it has signal on it, it's pretty likely that I had a hand in it.
So I've actually been here almost 6 years in April. April, I guess, is kind of a popular hiring time here. So it's a great place to work, and we get to work on a lot of fun projects for various promotions and merchandise. We get to design t-shirts and geocoins, trackables. We get to design souvenirs, which we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so with souvenirs, we talked with Annika from the marketing team about just the process of deciding on souvenirs and getting the process going, and then eventually they come to you guys, right? And they say, hey, we've got this country that's going to get a souvenir, or we have a new campaign. There's going to be a souvenir for doing something. And it's put in your laps. And then what do you guys do?
Well, anytime that it's part of one of our promotions or campaigns or something that we're handling here and kind of hosting at Geocaching HQ, Creative Studio, so Nate and I are usually in on the ground floor on that. And we help develop a lot of the visuals for the rest of the campaign, including any merchandise, so geocoins, trackable tags, any website assets that we might need. If there's going to be an Easter egg somewhere in there, we determine it early on. We'll bounce back to that later. So anytime that we do have one of those souvenirs, we kind of develop it along with all of the other assets for the promotion. So that way we make sure that everything looks together and it's nice and collected and cohesive, and that way it looks real pretty when you get the whole set like arranged all at once on your site there.
We try to add five or so new country souvenirs each year. And whenever I'm researching these locations, I always find that these are really beautiful places that I've not visited yet that I would like to go visit at some point. And we work closely with local reviewers or local geocaching associations there to get a good idea of what to cover in the souvenir for the region that we highlight. And we also things to include or not to include, and a little bit of background about the culture there. And we try to get a good essence of it all encapsulated in one souvenir without going overboard and adding too many things. But just a good feel for the country as a whole.
Yeah, you talked about not adding too many things because, one thing that you guys have to think about is where are these going to be seen, for instance, on mobile devices.
That's right.
And that you kind of have to keep it simple, right? Because that's kind of small on a mobile device, and that's the kind of stuff you guys have to think about.
That's correct.
There are folks out there, we hear from them all the time, that they'd really like to be helpful. They'd like to submit or help with artwork for these kinds of things. And that's not something that we do. And I'd love to hear you guys, because there's really good reasons for it. I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit about, more of the history behind that.
We have thought about that. We have looked into, what if we allowed people to just create souvenirs, and we'd get a lot more souvenirs out there a lot faster. But we'd like to have some consistency with the souvenirs, and also there's a lot of things that could be touchy subjects for countries or maybe not represent them properly. And so that's one of the reasons why we work closely with the local reviewers and geocaching associations.
Well, one of the fun things that you guys do with some of the campaigns that we have, Pi Day and so forth, sometimes you'll be sneaky. You'll hide little fun Easter eggs in there. Tell us a little bit about that.
The Easter egg started off where was it Pi Day? I think it might have been Pi Day, where we hid a 2-part special code in each of the 2 souvenirs. If you got those souvenirs, then you probably know it's there. And if you don't, I'm just going to tell you because you're not going to get it again. We had it hidden in the tin of the pie tin. And once you went to a specific site and you put those numbers in, you got a banner, I believe, to be able to put on your personal profile page. I'm going to say that 5 times fast later on and get totally tongue-tied. And that started off as just sort of like a fun little thing because we know that, all of you wonderful geocachers love your puzzles and decoding things, and oh man, I do too. So anytime moving forward since then, one of the questions that we ask ourselves anytime we come up with a new promotion is there some cool extra little thing that we can add in there just to give the community some kind of like sneaky, special, extra achievement? There's actually an extra Easter egg in the blog and Facebook images for Mission GC, since we weren't able to sneak one into the souvenirs themselves. And it's hidden on the computer screen in that image. So if any of you missed that, and I'm guessing a lot of you did, if you want to go back and decode that, there's a special little sneaky spy something that I hid in there just for you guys.
And speaking of Mission GC, that was one of our meta souvenir opportunities where you could earn kind of a bonus, right, for finding all of the souvenirs in that promotion.
think it started back in 7 Souvenirs of August. We had a secret extra souvenir that you could earn if you earned all the other souvenirs. And we kind of continued to do that each summer. So with the most recent promotion, Mission GC, if you earned the 3 souvenirs, you get a special meta souvenir, which depicted a agent with the kind of MI6, or in this case, HQ-47 lapel pin that he kind of earned his or her status as an agent.
Well, it's just awesome to hear about souvenir stuff. I know people are really interested in that. And at some point, we're going to have to just get you guys in and just talk about geocoins and trackables in general, because you do so much cool stuff with that. And people love that stuff too. And I think you could probably talk for a while about it.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be good.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, we can do a whole episode with them sometime. It is always so much fun to see the designs that they come up with for geocoins and t-shirts and all kinds of other stuff. Okay, shifting gears, you may have heard the news late last year that one of the long-lost ape caches was found. 14 ape caches were placed around the world in 2001 in conjunction with 20th Century Fox to support the movie Planet of the Apes, which I've still never seen. I've been to Brazil. I've found the last active ape cache down in Brazil, but I've still not seen that movie. So that's kind of crazy. Anyway, the second to last active ape cache was Mission 9 Tunnel of Light, located about 60 miles east of Seattle. It was placed by Jeremy Irish and by John Stanley, aka Mountain Bike. The cache was found more than 3,000 times before it was muggled in June of 2001. And then it was archived. But there was long a feeling among some cachers that the ape container might still be near that cache location. That's because it's a heavy container. It was located nearly 2 miles from the nearest parking area. And so some people speculated that possibly the muggle simply discarded the container nearby rather than carrying it all the way back to where they parked. So last year, a group of Seattle area cachers took it upon themselves to attempt to find that container. And they did find it. If you haven't read the story, it's on the geocaching blog. You'll find it dated November 11th of last year. So after it was found, we surveyed the community looking for ideas on what to do with the rediscovered cache. And if you continue to watch the geocaching blog, you will soon have an opportunity to take part in the final vote on what will happen with that ape cache. In the meantime, I thought it'd be fun to sit down with John and hear about his experience with the ape cache and what he thought when it was found. Now, one thing I should point out is that we at the office like to give John proper credit for being a geocaching pioneer. He is, however, a reluctant celebrity, which makes it all the more fun, of course. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. Here we go. Well, I think any conversation with you, John, has to start with your celebrity as a geocacher, doesn't it?
No. Jeez, Brian put you up to that.
Brian, no, he didn't, but I knew he would want me to. Okay, so we won't talk about your celebrity. We will talk just about the ape cache. And when you put Mission 9 Tunnel of Light out, that was July of 2001, long before you became an employee here at Geocaching HQ, but you were very involved in geocaching from the very beginning. So I wonder if what memories you have of being asked to be a part of this project.
Well, I think it was my role in defending against the apes that led to my choice to hide that. I had risen through the ranks to general, and where was there to go from there?
Well, you have to hide a cache, obviously.
Well, yeah, that's a woohoo. The local communities were recruited to hide the caches in all cases, and generally they were pulled from either reviewers or people who were extremely active in the area. For example, in the New York area, Cache Ninja was the person who hid the cache. He was actually a reviewer way back when. I think that he and I were tapped at the same time to be the first reviewer. So he was a natural choice in that area. Mark Well was chosen in the Chicago area, and I was tapped here in Washington. Because I had developed a relationship with the founders already back then, it was natural for Jeremy to accompany me on various outings. He was there when I reached my 100th milestone cache, which is where I placed the first geocoin, and he joined on hiding this cache as well.
Of course, when we look back at it now, it's taken on this aura among the geocaching community because there's only one active one today. But you couldn't have known that, right? I mean, back then that was going to happen.
Back then, I thought the big appeal of it was just for the first finder, which was finding the prop from the movie. That's what I thought would be the draw for people, and then it would just kind of be a normal cache after that. So it was exciting, I thought, for that initial rush to find, but I had no idea that they would become as iconic as they did.
So you owned a lot of caches before you put out the Ape cache, and I'm curious, and then have owned many others. Is there anything different about being the owner of a cache like this that became so iconic as opposed to the other caches that you own?
Well, it was much different in that it was owned by a sock puppet account for the first many years of its life. It was the Project Ape account owned it. And so no one knew really who had hidden it for many years. And in fact, I even joined a couple guys on a bike ride through the tunnel and logged it as a find back then, a year or two after having placed it, because it was just, no one knew who had placed it, and I was just along for the ride type thing. And it was only later on when it was decided that an account that could monitor it, what have you, should take over the ownership of it, that it was adopted over to me as actually having been the original placer along with Jeremy. And it was only then that it was known that it was my cache. So I left my find on it, even though I had been a placer. I know that some people frown on that, but it was part of the story back then.
And so hundreds of people over the years find the cache, but then, unfortunately, it goes missing. I think it was in 2011. And so the difficult decision comes to have to archive the cache. Maybe talk a little bit about how that came about.
Initially, the lid disappeared. So what we decided to do was secure the lid to the container by running a chain through it. And at the same time, we chained it just was natural to also chain the bulk of the container down as well, and then connect everything to there were some heavy pieces of metal up there, remnants from the railroad that used to run along the trail. And that was all buried in the debris pile in which the cache was hidden. Before we knew it, someone had cut the cable, actually it was a cable, and took another lid. And at that point, we increased the amount of security on the cache, bigger cable and chain. Secured a lid without putting, I don't think on the last one we ended up putting riveting coins to it again. We thought that was just too much of a prize for someone. We didn't know that they were targeting the cache actually at that point. We thought they were just wanting the coins on the lid. And then one day we got the word that the whole thing was missing. And it's not the kind of cache you DNF. It was a big container in a very obvious spot. And the fact that it as soon as someone DNF'd it, we knew it was gone. And at that point, we knew we had a serial targeter, and he had been stealing a number of caches in that general area. So we knew it was someone trying to mess with our game. When word came that cache was missing, because it had become so iconic and it was such a kind of a mecca for cachers around the world, not to mention just in the States, we sat down, we being Jeremy and Brian and other higher ups in the company, and I sat down with them and we discussed what should be done. And the decision, which was difficult, was that in the past, when the container has gone missing, that's the end of the ape cache. And that's the rule that had been enforced previously, and we needed to be consistent, and in this case, archive the ape cache.
And so now we fast forward 5 years or so, and this group from Seattle, a number of local cachers, they mount this effort. They find the container. I think you, from what I understand, you knew that they were going to be going out doing it. Did you think there was a possibility that they'd actually find anything?
I really did not. I thought that it was one of those where maybe they had a 5% chance of finding some remnant of the cache, but certainly not the container. They use some search and rescue techniques that basically looks at the path of least resistance, and so they focused on where potential energy, where something would likely end up, and boom, there it was.
When you saw the container, I think you were there when they brought it back, and Brian was out there in the visitor center here at HQ, and you were there too. Just kind of what went through your mind, and just what your thoughts were about the whole thing.
I think I was dumbstruck. I probably just looked like I was in a daze or something. I mean, it's only a container, a metal container, but I couldn't believe it. I just really, and then the stickers that were on it that were the ones from the original container, where people would sticker the inside of it, and including some that were from the 10-year celebration. That made it pretty clear that was the original container. I just I couldn't believe it, and I at that point I was regretting that I hadn't joined them on the outing. They had invited me on the hunt, but I thought it was such a low chance. Plus, I had obligations on the other side of the state that weekend. I had to turn it down. But then it was like, oh man, I wish I could have been there and seen it unfold. Pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. And it's very cool to hear just you talking about the history and talking about your thoughts on it being found. I think people will enjoy hearing about it. Anything we didn't cover?
Well, our plan to put it up on the space station so that everyone can now enjoy it.
I don't remember that being an option that we put out there, but
I was pretty sure I kept voting that in.
People, you're so good at that, John. People are going to think you're serious about that. And knowing you, being the celebrity that you are, you might be able to make it happen.
Stop it,
is the scary
Brian.
thing. All right. Thanks, John.
You bet.
So there you have it, episode 2 of Inside Geocaching HQ. Thanks again to Annika from the marketing team, to our awesome designers Nate and Roxxy, and to the father of the geocoin, ape cache owner, and all-around famous geocacher, John Stanley, for being a part of this episode. If you've got thoughts on our podcast, if you've got ideas for upcoming episodes, stuff that you'd like to hear us talk about, you can drop us a line. The email address is podcast@geocaching.com. That's podcast@geocaching.com. We would love to hear from you. Until then, from all of us at Geocaching HQ, happy caching.